I dropped out of high school.
You didn't even finish it.
Didn't even finish it. If you have the mindset, you have the dedication, the commitment, and you keep wanting to improve yourself every day, you'll get there, to where you want to be. And Michael Jordan was the same. If you look at The Last Dance, he always had to have an enemy. I want to beat myself every day. I think it would have to be the first big brand that you get, right? Like anything, the first big name, the first big deal, the first big brand, whatever it is like that, shapes you.
Welcome to a new episode of Business Meets Life, and hello from Sydney. We have amazing Athin here with me. Athin, first question for you. How is it possible every person in Sydney seems to be going on vacation to Greece nowadays?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a Greek background myself, and I think it's not being biased. When I talk to a lot of Australians, I think it's the best place in Europe to go to. And I think it's unmatched because, especially the islands that I recommend, there's so many of them. Each island is different. It's a different experience, whether you want to have more of a smaller island feel, a bigger island feel. The food, the water in the Mediterranean is amazing. The sun, it doesn't burn you and everything like that compared to the harsh sun that we have in Australia. And we get to escape winter because it's the opposite, right? So everyone leaves winter. We're in winter at the moment. It's a bit cold. And then, get into the summer in Greece and enjoy that. And it's also, I think, the Greek culture, right? We're very warming people. We're very giving. We'll bring you in, everything like that. And it's a nice feeling. You don't have to worry about anything being stolen or anything like that. In other countries, it's a nice place to visit. So highly recommended, not being biased at all.
Well, being German, we usually go to Greece, Turkey, Mallorca, or something like this. But yeah, Australians, good to know. So I'm excited to have Athin here with us today. So Athin is a business growth expert, investor, international speaker, coach, mentor, consultant, and a podcast host. He has this podcast for more than 5 years. Athin helps business owners to grow, scale their business to create wealth and freedom. Love it. From dropping out of high school, he actually told he would never be able to study and would never be successful. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into this. My first question to you, Athin, is I think we've known each other now for about 2 years, thanks to our coach, JT Fox. Now, you've helped businesses in over 30 industries across 10 countries. What patterns have you seen and what holds business owners back? And how do you actually help unlock their business growth?
Yeah, it's a great question. And business is business a lot of the time. A lot of people think, you got to work on one industry and everything like that. But the majority of business is the same, right? Yes, there's some.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. There's a few intricacies in each industry, and you can find that out with relationships and everything like that, right? But in the end, the engine of business is relatively the same. Now, when you understand that, what holds businesses back? So the biggest thing is that when I help people, I can teach people the same thing. 10 different people, the same strategies. Mm-hmm. There's 10 different results. Why is that? A lot of the time it's because of the mindset, right? Everyone thinks differently. And I think, growing up with our parents, were not as conscious about beliefs and everything like that, about what we do. And they would instill mostly limiting beliefs, right? Whether it's about money, about success, about just your self-worth, whatever, right? In what came up. And a lot of it happens in the first 7 years of our life. That's why a lot of people don't understand. And it carries on. And then only when you get to try and do things in business, you're like, oh, why isn't it working? And you need somebody like a coach, mentor, someone like that to be able to dig deep and go, okay, this is the thing that's holding you back. We need to change this. We need to shift this. So I think mindset's a big part. Also that's linked with mindset is identity. So I think a lot of people, they're transitioning to something, right? Maybe they had a job, let's say, and then they transition into an entrepreneur, into a business owner. Have they changed their identity? Because if they're still connected to that old identity, they're not going to be successful. Or maybe they need to go to the next level of their identity in terms of being like an investor or a deal maker and everything like that. If you're going to that next level of what you're doing and adding value as an entrepreneur with a lot of different businesses and opportunities and like that there. So I think that's a big part, and understanding what are the beliefs that support that identity. And then also stepping into that and believing it now that I am this person, I am, I have is the best ways to start beliefs in what it is, and rescripting those old beliefs. So if you think that, my dad growing up, bless him, wasn't aware, he did the best. I think everyone does the best they can with what they've got, right?
Of course.
So he said to me hundreds of times growing up, money is the root of all evil. Hundreds of times. So you can imagine what that would do to me when I'm older. So when I left my job, I started my first business. I wasn't making money at the start. And then I got Rich Dad Poor Dad as a book, and he talked about that belief.
I was about to say that.
Yeah. And he talks exactly about that money belief. I was like, wow. So I started rescripting that. And then I went to my first business event, through a friend where he got a ticket. He paid $4,000 to go to a 3-day event. And a week before, they said you can bring a friend for free. And I was 3 months into my first business. I quit my job. I burnt the boats, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like the universe, whatever you want to call it, God, right? Whatever you believe, said, and he goes, Athin, do you want to come to this event, right? And that was like my moment that I needed this. And I went in, like I invested, I read 100 pages of notes. I, changed my mindset completely. I implemented strategies, and all of a sudden, bang, success started to happen because I changed the way that I thought, and I was doing the actions that were needed, learning from people that had been there before and have those strategies. So I think that was really key with me. And that's what I think everybody needs to do, right? You can try and work things out yourself. It's going to take you a lot longer. Mm-hmm. If you learn from coaches and mentors, it's going to have to be a lot quicker. You're going to go through a lot less challenging times. And most people quit, I think, because they don't do that.
Yeah. So when you did your first business, did I understand it correctly? It's not that you had like your university degree or anything.
Yeah. So my story is I dropped out of high school, right? Year 12. So my parents were high school teachers as well. So they didn't like that, as you can imagine.
Is that the last year in Australia?
Yes, last year.
Okay.
1 year. Yeah. So
you didn't even finish it?
Didn't even finish it. I wasn't enjoying it anymore.
Oh my God.
I just dropped out. I wasn't happy. I'm that type of person. I'm like, I'm not going to stay in something if it, just for doing it, right? Unless there's a reason. So I dropped out, and my parents said, well, they tried to get me into university another way. It didn't happen. And I said, well, you need to get a job. I'm like, yeah, that's it. And I got a job. And my dad had, 3 degrees. And he said, you'll never be able to study, Athin, right? Because of that, And then one of my teachers at the school said, you'll never be successful. Can you imagine, right? Getting a 17-year-old child.
And it's this inner belief that you have for the rest of your life. But on the other hand, it could later also be something that gives you that extra motivation to prove everybody wrong, right?
Yeah. And I think it's from my sporting background growing up that I was able to do that. So I played a lot of soccer and tennis growing up, won a lot of championships. And I wasn't the most naturally gifted person. However, I would make myself one of the best players in the team, right? It's a bit like if you follow soccer or football, depending where you are, the Messi-Ronaldo thing. Messi is very talented naturally, whereas Ronaldo sort of built himself into the best player in the world, right? So I think not everyone is naturally talented, right, about that. So I think a lot more people can connect to Ronaldo's story, where if you have the mindset, you have the dedication, the commitment, and you keep wanting to improve yourself every day, you'll get there, to where you want to be. And Michael Jordan was the same. If you look at The Last Dance, he always had to have an enemy, right? In that way. Not everyone's like that. Tom Brady is, I want to beat myself every day. So everyone's a little bit different on how they're wired. So you got to understand that element. But I used it as fuel, saying, watch me prove you wrong. And then, went to that company, got a lot of great success. They moved me to Sydney. I've been now for over 13 years. Did a lot of big things there. And then I wanted to learn more about business. We had Friday drinks. Everyone's like, talking about their degrees. And I had nothing. I just worked my way up. And then I wanted to learn. I realized into one of the top universities here, I could get into doing an MBA, a master's of business administration. So I got to skip school in the bachelor. And then, 10 years later, whatever it was,
it's seriously that lets you in like
that? Yeah, as long as I got decent marks in my first 4 subjects, that's what I had to do, then I could continue, right, in the course.
That's impressive. And may I ask, what was your age when you did the MBA?
I was about, I'd say about 26, 27. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Wow, well done.
Yeah. So it was, and what I think is important is like I had a lot of experience. I sort of know what I wanted, because at 18 years old, you don't know really what you want to do, right?
Yeah, at least for most people.
So I knew I wanted to learn more about business, and I was like, well, let me study the thing. And I also had to have entrepreneurship subjects through there where we did actual practical things. But I did most of the core subjects, and then basically there was a change of management, didn't enjoy it anymore after 10 and a half years at that company, and I left and started my first business. And that's when I burned the boats and started my business the next day, which is very risky, but I'm just like an all-in type person and made it happen. Then I went to that event, and, the rest is from there, growing.
That is so inspirational to see where you have come from. And also, as you said, okay, I'm always all in. I need to enjoy it. That's what I've heard from you. You've also said, like, you just put in the work and you become one of the best, right? So you don't make any excuses. It's great. Now, nowadays, you've actually worked with iconic brands like Kmart, Kohl's. I love shopping at Kohl's, and the Department of Defense even. What could you say has been your most transformational business moment so far? And why?
Most transformational, yeah. I think it would have to be the first big brand that you get, right? Like anything, the first big name, the first big deal, the first big brand, whatever it is like that shapes you, right? The first big podcast guest, whatever it is, right? It shapes everything. So, from my story, I went to this event, right, that I mentioned, and I learned my mindset was improved. I learned about sales and all these other skills that I needed. And I was like, okay, well, who do I have that I know in my network, right? Because a lot of the time, business is all about relationships, right?
Yes.
So anything is the simplest form. So you're doing business with people.
And I feel like in Australia, from the culture, and in China, even way more compared to, for example, in Germany, where a lot is like still very process and rational.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely very relationship based. So, if I was there, I was thinking, okay, well, who do I know or who have I met before? And about 3-4 years before that, when I worked at my previous company, I met the lady who was the sustainability manager at Westfield, which is the biggest shopping center group right here, big in London and the US as well. And I met her for 5 minutes. It was at a corporate box at a Madonna concert we got to do, which is pretty cool. And I literally...
Let's go to Madonna concert.
And, we bought a few clients there. I literally had a few-minute conversation. She would not remember me, right? Mm-hmm. However, I was very smart at the time that I said, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn, right? Mm-hmm. So I had her as a connection. So my brain went, who do I know? I was like, wait a minute. And then you hear about things so that was in the waste management industry, right? And I hear, because contracts come up every 3 to 5 years, so there's a timing thing. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'm very good with tenders to be able to save a lot of money. And I thought that it was around the time that it was coming up, right? So I thought, let me reach out and see if I can add value. So I sent this amazing LinkedIn message. And I was just in my head, I'm like, I've got this meeting. I was so sure. And I was like, mindset, right? And she came to me and she was like, hey, Athin, great to meet you again. I reminded her that we met there, right? Great to see you again. We're actually going out to tender in a month. We've already had all these consultants in and all this stuff that we've invested. I'm still happy to meet you though. And I was like, I'm in, right? The conviction, the belief that I'm like, I'm in here. It was unwavering, right? So I went to this coffee meeting and I'm like, and this is with anything, right? Whether it's a big brand with anybody, it's always about adding value first where you can, and sometimes adding value for free. So I went into this meeting and I said, okay, you've already got consultancy. What's going on? I said, listen, let's sign an NDA, confidentiality agreement. Send me your documents and I'll just give you my thoughts on what's good, what's not good, what you can improve. You don't have to pay for anything, right? Free consulting.
Nice.
So it's a way for me to prove myself and add value. Now, I was very strategic in that because I picked out a lot of gaps that they had, right, as well.
Of course.
And then, so I added value as well, but I picked out a lot of gaps. And then she looked at it and she goes, yeah, we need you, Athin. Okay, we're going to delay the thing by a couple of weeks. Let's get you in. Let's get you the documents. And I was able to adjust a few things. And then from that deal, like they were a big contract. I saved them $4 million a year, and over a 5-year contract, $20 million, right?
Wow. And you were what age?
Me? I was like 26, 27.
Wow.
So, that was actually, it would have been slightly more, maybe 28, 29, right? But still, it's still my 20s. So, I think what people don't understand is like, it's a massive deal. So that little bit of consulting work, it was massive. And as soon as I get them, it's like, okay, I did a little bit of consulting for Coles. They helped me. I tried to reach out for that. I helped them with a little small thing, saved them money. And then I got introduced to Kmart and Target because I was part of the same group. And then I've been working with them for over 6 years now on a lot of different brands, saved them millions of dollars. And then it all adds up, right? With all these big brands, defense, that I've worked with. And it's always the first one, right? So how can I add value? Your name gets out there. You do good work. People obviously want to save money, save time. And in waste management, it's obviously, to recycle more or be sustainable, of course. So there's elements understanding your industry. That's where it all started from.
I love this story. Now, let me go back a little bit. So we know that 80% or more is always about mindset, and we can already feel how skilled you are in your work as a business growth, as a consultant and so on. Now, when you said like you knew exactly you would work with her, right? I could feel the conviction. In that moment, even before we go into those kind of meetings, our mind messes us up. Like I also run a lot of like those mental fitness, positive intelligence trainings and coachings. I just did that in Dubai recently where we had 150 real estate agents from Dubai. And at the end, especially in those stressful times, it's your mind that messes you up, right? And I give them different techniques, how to stay strong, what's your technique to stay so convinced before you go into the meeting, before you do the closing, before any crucial situation, that your mind and the doubts, maybe the disbelief in yourself that suddenly kicks in because we're just human? How do you control yourself?
Yeah.
So you don't self-sabotage? Because we all do, right?
We all do. It's a great question. And I think this has been definitely a big thing that I talk about, right? So we all get negative beliefs, right? From time to time that pop up, the doubts and everything like that. And it's about catching that and doing the opposite of that, right? At the time. Now, before I go into any meeting, whether it's that meeting with them, going into to meet a Westfield or a big brand, before I do a podcast interview, before I do a sales call, before I'm meeting someone, I am always telling myself what's going to happen.
Oh, so you're going you're running through it, you're visualizing it, or?
Yeah, so I basically say, I'll use the Westfield example because we're talking about it. So I rock up to Westfield and let's say I'm walking there and I'm on the way. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to go into this meeting. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to be articulate. I'm going to be building relationships with every person in the room. I'm going to be presenting what I'm doing and they're going to be liking it. They're going to see the value and then I'm going to be moving it to the next stage, doing the deal, whatever the outcome that I want. So I'm literally saying exactly how I'm going to be in that room, what intention I want, and what I want to get out of it, right?
So positive self-talk.
Positive self-talk. And sometimes I've done this out loud as well, depending on people around me, but definitely in my head, right? So, and then when I go into that meeting, I'm doing this just before, right? Then, you're in such this great state, this confident state, even before a podcast interview. I did this on the way here, right? Mm-hmm. I'd come in and I'm going to be same thing. I'm going to add a lot of value. I'm going to be articulate. This is going to connect with people. Going to make a massive impact. It's going to be able to connect with partners, with deals, with clients, all of that. So that's what I'm putting out there, right? Because there's quantum physics, there's all these things, right? Everything is energy that's around us, right? So the intention that we put out is what we attract, what we magnetize to ourselves, right? And this is all proven, right, with quantum physics and stuff. So the clearer the intention, the clearer that you can attract that, right? So we've got to, and there's things that can come in our minds that can stop us. So it's like just pushing that to the side. I don't care what the mind is coming on. We're going to override it with this. And that's where everything changes and you can, have the highest chance of getting the outcome you want.
Thank you so much for sharing this. So you also use a lot of NLP techniques, right? And what I've noticed, I'm also a coach and I'm a master practitioner in NLP, but every successful business person I meet out there, even when we were in LA last year, remember Ziad from Dubai? He actually coached me on some NLP, between the walls, at the conference, and every successful person uses NLP. How do you use NLP or other coaching techniques, to be a successful, business practitioner?
Yeah, I'm an NLP master practitioner as well. And I think it's really important, because NLP is a bit more like a manual for your life and how we are as humans, right? It's it gives you a lot of awareness of how we are being. Yeah. And then from there, it's like strategies and tools to be able to shift yourself or shift other people if they want to be shifted.
Or shift other people. I love it because it's not only about ourselves too, right?
Yeah. And you get a lot of breakthroughs, obviously tools and that in the tool belt.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily use all of them. However, when you understand that, with the information that we get, we delete, distort, generalize everything, right? So, for example, if you're wanting to buy a Tesla, as soon as you start thinking about a Tesla, you see Teslas everywhere on the road. They're always there. It's just your reticular activating system, your RAS, is now saying, this is important to me.
You've got to laugh about it. I literally thought about this morning. I feel like in Shanghai, I see Teslas everywhere. And then this morning, I saw a Tesla, and I think it was our friend Gary Brown. He started to talk about Tesla stocks. He posted it on his Moments on Instagram a couple of days ago. So I started to become so aware exactly of Teslas here in Sydney now.
Funny, right? And that's that reticular activating system. So that's the part of our brain going, oh, this is important to us. We're now going to show it to you. So this is when you have that awareness, it's like, well, we want to make sure that we're telling our brain what's important to us because there's so much information, there's so many things out there that we're missing because our brain is too much, right, for us to handle consciously. Our unconscious mind is doing that. So when you understand that, it's like, okay, well, when I'm dealing with other people, I want to make sure I'm focusing on the right things. And then let's say, if it's a coaching client, right, I'll use that example now, is when you want to understand people, what they tell you at the start is more of the surface level thing, right? So I've got this problem, I've got this thing, but it's actually not really the problem. There is a deeper problem there, right? So
the root.
The root, that's right. So, and when you ask questions, a lot of people think a why question, but that's actually the incorrect thing to ask. Because if you think about it, if you've got a child and they're walking past the kitchen bench and they knock over a glass or a mug and it breaks, right, on the ground. It's like, why did you do that? Like, I don't know why I did that. You know what I mean? Like, it just happened. But if you ask a what or a how question, that is how you dig deeper. So if I can give a little tip to everybody here, right, the what and the how questions are the gold. Because you say, well, what happened there when you did that? Or I was running and I slid and something like that. Or how did you, do it or whatever like that. And then as you start to dig deeper on those questions, you start to actually see the root cause. And this is good for a sales conversation as well, right? Because people will tell you maybe their potential objections or what they value. Now, the only time I would use a why question in like sales is good is like, why is that important to you? So you understand what's important to them. So that's a good way to use why. But apart from that, once you understand that bigger element, then it's digging deeper with the what and the how questions to really understand the deep motivations about someone or the deeper objection, not that the surface level objection of what it actually is. And when you get to that root cause, then you can help them and link that, with what the solution is that you're providing as a service. So I think NLP is very powerful for that, is understanding the root cause of something to be able to connect with people in that area. And there's other things like, simple things that I can say today is like matching and mirroring, right? So, if you're across the room, if you're leaning a little bit this way, I'll lean a little bit this way. If you've got your hands a particular way, I'll get my hands a particular way, right? All of that stuff. And you think like, do I really do that? Are they going to notice? Or it's unconscious though, right? All of a sudden they'll be like, I don't know why, but I'm vibing here, with the person.
We can see this is happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. So when you understand that there's these human, things that how we are, how we behave, it's like use that, to your advantage to build a relationship with someone, and it's not, some people say, oh, is it manipulation and things like that? It's no, because the intention is there. What's your intention? It's like a knife. A knife could be there to cut a sandwich or it could be there to kill someone. It's always based on the intention, right? So just like a car, you know what I mean? A car could get you A to B, or you could run into a building with it, right? And do something wrong. So most people have good intentions, right? On what you do. So whether it's NLP, whether it's other things around you, what's the good intention that you're doing part of it? And to be able to connect with someone and move them, because it's important, because people get in their own way, basically.
Oh, yes. Self-sabotage again.
Self-sabotage. So you've got to be able to help them move through that, and they will actually be very grateful in the end, and whatever that is, right? Whether you just help them directly with something, whether it's about partnering together, doing a deal together, you're having them as a client, getting them over something, whatever it is, connecting them to someone, helping them get out of their own way, making them aware, because we're all not aware of our thoughts, unless you do a lot of work on yourself and you start to become really aware.
So true. Okay, so let's talk about entrepreneurship struggles here, right? Because many of us entrepreneurs, we struggle to scale. And to be honest, it's also been one of my challenges. Like in China, as a coach, as a trainer, it's very like people related and so on. Now, what would be like, what's that one principle? And I know we've spoken about mindset shifts already, right? But what's that one principle, a mindset shift you wish more business owners understood when it comes to sustainable growth?
Yeah. And I think this is where most people, hang up. And I think most people, when they get into business, they have a skill, right? They've learned something on a job, or, they've got some skills and they go out there to deliver that skill, right? Unless it's a product, it could be a product, but they've learned something and they've built something, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time there's some level of skill, some level of expertise, let's call it, right? That they're putting out there. And all the thought a lot of the time is no one can do it as good as me. And the challenge with that is it's true, because we're all unique. No one's going to do anything as well as us, because we are us, right? So it's being okay that somebody else could do it, for example, 80% as good as you. And most people have too high standards, or they can't let go, right, in terms of what that is. And they want to go, oh, I just want to control it because I can get to the level of standard or to the level of what I want to do. And if you have that mentality, that's what's going to hold you back. So you've got to be okay to let go and give people a chance. Obviously, the way you train them, the way you lead them, all of these things is important, right? To give them the best possible chance to succeed, because you put someone in the deep end, you don't give them any training or leadership, and you wonder why they fail. It's actually probably you that allowed them to fail instead of giving them the chance to succeed. And then once you do that and you go, wait a minute, I just got now, instead of 100% of my time, I have 180% of time that's being in the business. And then add another person, 260%. And you start to then go, okay, what are the things that I don't like as much in my business doing, right? And And it's easier to think about it from the lower level tasks. Like the revenue generating tasks is what we should be focusing on. So the admin type tasks, the things that are not directly revenue generating, this could be like, for example, a virtual assistant that you could get or something like that at the start. How can you start to delegate those smaller tasks that still need to be done, however, are not as important for the scalability, the growth of the business? So that's what I'll be doing. And then going, okay, how do I keep duplicating myself and everything there? Now, part of that is the business model as well, because some people, think about there might be a project-based business, and that becomes challenging because we all need recurring revenue. So understanding the business model, recurring revenue, what are you doing there to be able to then go, okay, if I sell this amount or however I structure my deals, then I can hire the next person, right? Which will free up my time to focus on the more important things that I need to do. So we should be focusing on relationships, like the sales, the marketing, knowing the numbers in the business, that, for a little bit as well. But that big growth side, that's what we should be focusing. The delivery of the product or service, the admin, the back end stuff, we should not really be getting, involved in that as much. And I think if you can do that, have the right business model that you're scaling, you get that sales marketing engine right, and then you just hiring people underneath it and being okay that they're doing that, but you're putting the systems in place that allows for the minimal, errors and things like that. That's what's going to get you to scale and being okay with that. And once you break through that and you're going, okay, this is really working really well, and we're now able to bring it up, then everything's possible from there.
Love it. All right, let's talk about your podcast. So, how have you started your podcast? And I mean, this is more than 5 years ago, right? Because a lot of people don't know where to start. Basically, like why or how have you started? And where has it got to, and why do you actually still continue after more than 5 years?
Yeah, I love podcasting. And I know when I went into it, right? So I think everyone's probably thought of podcasting, even me then, for years, right? Beforehand. And then, I was on one of my coaching calls with my coach, our coach, and I was being very strategic, asking high-level questions. And he messaged me directly and he said, you need a podcast, you need a show. And when someone's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, you listen, right? And I was like, okay, well, I've been thinking about it for a couple of years. This is a few of the names that I've been thinking about. And he goes, yep, the Business Growth Show. Interview me first. Let's make it happen.
The Business Growth Show.
The Business Growth
Where
Show.
Can we listen to it and see it?
Everywhere. Spotify, Apple, even got a bit on YouTube if needed as well.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I love how you structured your YouTube. I'm going to model a little bit from what you did. And especially the background banner on YouTube looks really nice, I got to say. With like Bruce Buffer, who you've interviewed, Jillian Michaels, who else did I forget? Jay Abraham, and so on.
Yeah.
Love it.
My wife's got a branding agency, so she definitely makes things look good. So
to your wife.
Yeah, as good as my wife, definitely. So, when I did it initially, right, it's like, he said, interview me first, let's do it. And when I commit to things. And I think that's the biggest thing for people. For a podcast, it's a long-term game. Most podcasts don't get past 20 episodes, less than 1%, right? So because you're not going to get a direct ROI initially, and it's about how you leverage the podcast later, right? Most podcasts are not going to get millions of downloads and sponsorships like the Diary of a CEO, all these types of podcasts. Most are not going to get there. It's a different thing, right? It's about building a brand. It's about, connecting with people, right?
That's not what people see. And especially in Asia, podcasts are still new and growing. I've spoken to so many people in China. They don't even know the English term of podcast, what specifically it means. And if so, they rather focus on just like audio, but not like with video like us. Yeah. So there's definitely still a growing trend and potential here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So that's how it started there. Now, whenever I do something, I always thought, what's going to be the least friction, let's call it? How can I make it so that I can stay consistent? Because I'm going to commit to this. So I thought, okay, well, as much as I love in person, and I've done many in-person podcast interviews, Zoom is going to remove friction at the start. Because I don't need to be in person with a person. I can interview someone all over the world, right? With all these big names.
Also, you don't have to pay extra for like Riverside or any other kind of like specialized podcast technology. And some people are just not good with technology. It might be hindering them again, right?
Yeah.
But we're in Zoom all the time.
Exactly. So that's easy. And then, I signed up to Anchor FM, which now got bought out by Spotify.
Exactly.
Years later. So now it's Spotify for creators. I think they've called it now.
Yeah.
Which is free, right? To host a podcast on that platform. So that was easy there. Just recording on Zoom, very simple. And then, basically just, reach out to my network, right? You just got to have a decent microphone. The camera's all right, but the microphone's the most important. And I just started off with a Blue Yeti, which is about 150 Australian or something like that. Dollars, maybe, a bit under 100 US. Now I've got a proper Shure microphone that I've more recently got, but, it's like, what's the minimum that I can do? The lighting, you want to be decent, maybe some box lights that I got, relatively cheap as well, less than $100. So these are the things where it's like, okay, what's the minimum tech that I need and the most simplest tech and to be able to get people. And then you just reach out to people, reach out to your network, there. And then once you do that, you can also ask people, can you introduce me to anyone and everything like that? And all of a sudden you start to do it. And I would say that I knew I wanted to be consistent. That was important. So I recorded at least 5 episodes before I launched. So then I had a month's worth of podcast episodes. So if I don't record one week, it's okay. You know what I mean? I can still stay consistent with the recording. So I always have episodes in the bank. Like we went overseas for 8 weeks. I have 13 episodes in the bank. So when I got back, I still had a month, right? So I can flex and flow with those recording interviews. And all of a sudden, it probably took a year or two, I reckon, to get traction. And then, I get emails daily from podcast booking agencies or people booking on my website saying, hey, I want to be on the Business Growth Show, me or
really?
my clients. And everything
so
like
you
that.
could actually charge them money. I'm only going to interview you if you pay me X amount of money.
Right? There's a lot of demand, which is good. Now, I'm not charging people at the moment, right? Maybe if it was in person, potentially. But, so that's been awesome, right? But I think, where the real power of it is number one, getting authority. Like once you get the first big name or whatever, whether you obviously have connections or sometimes you can invest a little bit, just like if you go to an event, you can get a picture backstage with the speaker, right? It can be an investment. Sometimes, maybe you could invest in interviewing someone, right? If that's good to do. So sometimes that's a leg in if you need to. If someone's like, I don't know anyone, well then, you can always pay to play, right? And to get into rooms and meeting people. So whatever it is, once you get the first big names, you can leverage it and keep moving on from there. And you can say, I've had this person. From there, I've interviewed, like you said, all these big names. And it was always a belief. And I think it came down to, like, when I was at my previous company, I talked about this actually on a podcast that I was interviewing someone this morning where the managing director, when I moved to Sydney, everyone was like scared of him. He's like the big guy. He has to deal with politicians every night, all this type of stuff. And he would walk around the office and everyone would he'd make little jokes that would be like little chuckle. They wouldn't say anything. Whereas me, I'm like, he's just a normal person. I'm going to create a joke back with my wittiness and make him laugh. And then at least once a week, if not most days, I would walk into his office and just say, hey, what's going on? Tell him some fun stories and have a joke with him. And all these people looking at me and senior managers, what are you doing in there? So I'm just chatting to it,
Creating a relationship.
Right? So it's like whether they're a normal person, whether they're a celebrity, like everyone is a person, right? So don't feel that, you have to be, oh, wow, I've got to, tiptoe or I'm not worthy or whatever like that to speak to this person. Yeah.
And speaking about your podcast and your own company, how has the podcast actually helped your company? Do you have or what has been the biggest success thanks to your podcast in terms of your company?
Yeah. So to frame that quickly, the way I think the podcast is the biggest thing, apart from the authority and stuff, is about partnerships, right? So when especially lately, like the last couple of years or so, especially with my mindset has been going, how can I partner with this person? How can we do something together? Now, maybe that's just introducing them to someone and maybe there's a deal that can happen there. Maybe there's something we can directly do together, right? So that's been my mentality. I'm not there to necessarily have them as a client, right? It's about partnerships. How can we do something together? So for example, I just signed a deal, right? I won't go into too specifics, right? With a company, it's going to be a very big deal over many years, and all of that started from a podcast interview. And I even think I can't remember the original one. I even think it might have been one of these emails, right? So I get my VA to put them all into a spreadsheet when I get these emails. Occasionally, if I'm running a little bit low, and I say, let's see who's a high level person that I could interview. I interviewed this person, and I said, hey, do you know anyone that I could interview? Right? And like that as well. And at the end of the podcast, and he goes, oh, you're in Australia. Do you know this guy? Interview him. I'm like, awesome. So he connected us and we got along really well, right? Very high level guy, interviewed him. And I said, hey, I'm working on this project here. I'm looking for this. Do you know anyone that, you could connect me with? And he's like, oh, you got to speak to this person. He's amazing. Introduced to him. And then he goes, oh, you got to speak to this person. Introduced to him. Interviewed him. And then introduced me to another person. I'm going, wait a minute, I think there's an opportunity for you here that you probably weren't thinking about. but maybe there's a synergy here. So then I had that meeting, I interviewed him, and, just signed a deal to partner together, right?
And this was always a podcast interview, right? Because you said, like, you were working on a project, can you introduce me? But this was, when you asked to be introduced, this was not about the work, this was about the podcast.
Definitely.
Right?
Exactly, right? It's into the relationship. That's the biggest thing about a podcast, because if I go to someone, hey, let's do business together, especially if they're a high level person, it's like, who are you? We're going to do business, whatever like that. But when you want to add value to someone, interviewing them on a podcast is how you add value, right? So it's understanding that that's the power of it, getting into the relationship, and then from there, you're able to build that up and go, how can I leverage this? How can I do something with that? And it's always the connection to the connection to the connection. And some things will happen quickly. Some things may take time, right? But you do that, and then anything's possible for deals. So it's not directly monetizable, the podcast. It's how do you leverage the relationships that you're building in that podcast to be able to partner, do deals, get clients, whatever like that, do a business together. That's the power of the podcast.
I love it. Thanks for sharing this. We're going to change the scene now to bring in some variety. Stay tuned.
Awesome.
Part 2, guys. We're moving into the private part of your life now. And also, I've just learned that beginning of September, when I'm going to be here for an event at the Sydney Opera House, you're going to be speaking on stage, right?
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to that. To be able to get the unique, iconic Sydney, Opera House. It's going to be amazing.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your private life, right? So, you've built a very powerful global brand. You've worked with some of the biggest names from all around the world. What role has your family played behind the scenes during your rise?
Yeah, definitely. My wife especially, right, is a big part of this. And I'm grateful that she is also an entrepreneur, right? She has a branding agency, with marketing as well. So that helps, right? And when we first met, so it's been over, I think it was 2018 that we first met in March. It's actually a really cool story. Let me do the very quick version of it. But basically, one of our friends was coming from Adelaide. We both grew up in Adelaide, funny enough. She was coming to Sydney to do a group meditation event. And I was like, yeah, I'm open, and I was just getting into more of that stuff back then. And we're outside in this room waiting. I noticed her from outside the hallway. And as we were walking in, our friend said, I want you to whisper to me your name and the trait you're going to bring to the group, like love, compassion, something, right? There's a group of 50 people. We went in a group. I said Athin, I said confidence. I just did some personal development just before. I was feeling very confident. So that's the trait. Now we're all in this room with yoga mats. By chance, I was next to her, right? On the yoga mat. And we're doing little exercises like learning about chakras and all these other things like that. And we go through a guided meditation later. And our friend running it says, okay, I want you to think about the biggest thing holding you back, like your biggest limiting belief. And I had to rack my brain for a little bit here because I just did some personal development. So I sort of got rid of, some stuff. And then my brain what came to me was I've always made an excuse about a girlfriend. So I was single for 10 years. I had some girlfriends when I was quite young. One asked me to sort of marry her when I was 18. I said no after 6 months. Interesting story. We won't talk about that one, right? And then I was like, okay, I don't want to jump into anything. But I always made excuses like, I'm going overseas here. I don't want a girlfriend. I've got my business. I'm too busy. These types of things.
No excuses in the work, but lots of excuses in the private part.
Right. But it's interesting because, only then when I started to work on myself was I realizing that this is what I was doing, right? Because that was when I was younger, right? And I was in my, 18 and 20s. So from there, I was like, okay, well, what do I want? She goes, what's the opposite of that in the best possible way? I said, well, what's my perfect woman? And I started saying these things in my mind, like, business-minded, spiritual, understands these things, European background, Greek if possible, there's the same similar humor, movies, all these things. And I was really specific. I said like 30 to 50 things, right? Extremely specific.
And there she was right next to you.
And then the event finishes, we all get it, no one's spoken, right, for the whole time. We all get in a circle. She goes, I want you to say your name and the trait you bring. She was next to me, she said, Irene, she said confidence. And I just chuckled. I'm about to say the same word. No one else had said it, right? I say it, and then it ends, and I go, "That's not a coincidence. We need to have a chat." And she's, when she's next to me, she's like, "Who's this guy trying to talk to me?" And we started talking. She's like, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "I got my waste management consulting business at the time." And now she's like, I've got a branding agency. So I'm like ticking my head for business, ticking for spiritual. And then she goes, what's your background? I said, I'm full Greek. She goes, I'm half Greek, half Italian. So there's a tick there. Ooh. And then I had a Cobra Kai t-shirt on, right? And she goes, do you know where your t-shirt's from? She goes, and I said, yes, do you? She goes, I watched Karate Kid, the movie last night, and you're wearing the t-shirt from that movie. And then we started doing Simpsons lines. I literally created, manifested, magnetized, whatever word people want to use, my wife instantly at that event when I asked for her. So that's a crazy thing about, and that's the power of intention, right? I was talking about quantum physics. And if you're in the right moment and it's there for you in the right time and you know what you want, it can happen instantly or it might take years, right? It depends. So that's what happened there, right? And so the business minded was really important for me because I knew that I've heard stories because I analyzed my friends. Yeah. And I didn't tell her this until we were official 3 months later because I knew I could scare her away. Because I was analyzing my friends for those 10 years and all the problems they had with their relationships. So that's why when I asked for what I wanted, it was specific. And I knew people had businesses, if the other partner just had a job, no offense to that, of course, it's just that there wasn't an understanding there, right?
I thought the same, yeah.
Yeah, so fast forward, my wife, I went to a JT event and I'm like, I have to do this. She goes, well, if you want to do it, go do it, right? Invest in yourself. I make sure that when I go to the big events where we're learning things, my wife is there with me. So we're growing together.
This is amazing. So you don't easily grow apart and go different paths like how it happens with so many people.
That's right. So we don't have to do every single thing together, but the bigger stuff I want to experience with her, right? So we both get the breakthroughs and then she understands it. So now, it's an amazing thing, right? So then she's been a big part of it, because my parents, they don't understand. They're like, what do you do for work? And what's this business stuff? How do you make money? They still don't really understand because they're from a teacher background. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful that I actually moved out of Adelaide because Adelaide is like a big country town. It's like a bubble. And I think the stats are anyone that just stays around their friends that doesn't necessarily grow. Like you're living all over the world, things like that. When you go into a different environment, especially a bigger environment like Sydney, the biggest city in Australia.
So mind-opening,
a lot of more opportunity, all of that. So, whereas each of their own on their paths, but that's put me into that area. So being away from that has helped, and having a supportive wife that's going, let's grow, let's travel, let's, do deals, whatever it is, invest in yourself. Yeah.
So both of you are entrepreneurs. You just became a dad recently, 6 months ago, right?
Yes, that's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you guys actually manage private life, keeping a balance, and work, or I don't know, maybe it's work-life integration? How do you make sure you have enough time for each other to be husband and wife, not only entrepreneurs and managers and mom and dad?
Yeah, this is definitely the challenging part, right?
Are you getting red now?
Yeah, well, it's what I say to people in a relationship, right, is when you understand that opposites attract, right, in a relationship. And so to do that, there is a spark and there is tension. So there is always tension in relationships. There's always going to be something. Now, we are quite aware of this. So whenever we have, someone gets a little bit emotional or whatever like that, I'm like, it's okay, babe. It's just tension is natural in a relationship. So we allow the emotion to go through and we work through it very quickly. And then we're back on track, right? So that's a really key part. Now, when you understand this, there's been challenges. Obviously, I'll talk before the child and after the child, right? Before the child, we had a lot more time. So it was yes, I sometimes work at night or early mornings because I've got, meetings and interviews or whatever that I'm working on, but we would still have more time to travel, to do these things. But at the same time, sometimes we wouldn't have time. And then, now it's even much more challenging. Now with a child, being 6 months old, my wife hasn't. My wife didn't get a year maternity leave that most women do when they work.
She's an entrepreneur.
She's an entrepreneur. So it happened just before Christmas. So she got a little bit of time off and came for a couple of months, and then it's straight into business. And now she's trying to breastfeed, trying to, we have to get sitters in basically. She's trying to do work in between to do all this sort of stuff to be able to, keep the momentum going in the business. And I'm doing all these meetings, doing this other stuff. Yes, I have a little bit of time during the day, but I don't have a lot. And then sometimes my meetings go a bit late and we're not talking as much now, right? So, even this morning, or last night, she's like, where are you? We need to see each other more. We need to do sort of stuff. And there's tension there. It's not easy. So I don't have all the answers right now, but what we're saying is, okay, we need to get a sitter in and we need to get, because the relationship is different to the child as well, right? So you have a family relationship, what we do with him, but we need to have time together as well outside of him. So obviously he's young, so it's a little bit harder. We don't have a lot of close family. Our parents are not here. Our siblings are not here in Sydney. So we don't have that to lean on, which makes it a little bit more challenging as well. So it's we've got a good relationship with a house sitter now, a babysitter. So let's get her in, and that's the plan now, is go out a little bit more, do that type of stuff. So we get a little bit more of our own time in it now that is sort of, a bit older, that is more manageable in that way there. So I think it's, that's part of it with understanding the juggling act, but it is real. And it's funny, right? From like, I've got a lot of opportunity now. When you've got opportunity, there's momentum. And my wife understands that. So one side, she's like unhappy with me because we're not spending that much time right now. But because this momentum is really building for me right now, as I said, doing these big deals and stuff, she goes, okay, but I will deal with it. I'll still complain, but I know that you're doing it for the family and everything like that. So I will let you do that, where I've been, staying up late a lot of the times this week, just working on all these things. And we just have to work through that. So I think it's a conversation. It's what are we doing to do it? I'm not just saying, hey, don't worry about it. It's like, okay, well, how do we solve this? Let's get someone in. Let's do things outside of that. How do we have some time? Even if it's just go down and go get a coffee or a meal or something like that by ourselves, as well as then spending more time on the weekends. Like I still play soccer, but allowing us time even as a family and stuff to go out. So it's just. It is an integration still, right? What we do, yeah.
For us in China, it's a nice thing. It's very easy to get, and also very affordable, basically, to have like a house sitter or somebody to clean the house, or just to literally live with you, cook for you. I mean, different countries have different systems, right? Thank you so much for sharing this. We're slowly wrapping this up. Guys, I definitely want you to start following his amazing podcast, the Business Growth Podcast,
The
right?
Business Growth Show, yeah.
The Business Growth Show. Actually, there's one last question I think I would like to ask you. Let's talk about mental health. Walking around the city of Sydney, I've seen like, wow, mental health is a big topic here. Also for the Vivid Show, I saw different shows. Even there was this guy from New York who did like a show on basketball, his skills. He's called I Am the Basketball Man or so. Something like this on Instagram. But basically he wanted to raise awareness on mental health. And it is a topic as well. With your clients or even with yourself, because at the end it's not just business growth, means numbers and finance and so on. Do you have, are burnouts also very, very, very common here? How do you make sure they don't happen? Like, do you have any other key takeaways or tips on sustaining that mental health, no matter what challenges are popping up in your private or work life?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think COVID, put more of a magnifying glass on this, right? Because people, we crave connection. It's naturally as humans. So when you're away, and I think people are working from home more anyway as well. So I think to some extent, you've got to make sure you're getting out. If you're working from home or you're working from even a shared office, like, or whatever like that, it's like, are you going for walks? Are you keeping yourself active? Are you actively, going out to events or meeting people, friends, whatever that is, right? I think that's an important part. So you're part of something, you're part of a community, you feel that you belong, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an important part. And the exercise, even if it's just a walk. I play, sport like soccer and stuff as well. Whatever it is for you, I think that helps from the mental side to be able to clear the stress. I think also for me, like sometimes I'm back to back or I've got a little bit of time. I need to reset in between meetings. So I might go out, it's a bit cold now, obviously winter, but I might go out barefoot on the grass and I'll, get some grounding happening, just do a few deep breaths. Or even if you don't have your feet there, just doing a few deep breaths, whether it's at your desk or going for a walk, just allowing to reset your energy, right? Because there might be a little bit of stress. You're doing, you're putting your body under a little bit of pressure depending on what you've got on. So you've got to be able to regulate that, right? I think that's really important for people to understand that. I do some cold showers, do some other things like that as well. Now, so that's the mental health part on that side. Now, the other side is, okay, well, things are popping up. How do we move forward, right? In terms of what we're doing. So for me, I think, when you're working with people, you've got to understand that it's all an energy game, right? And we learned this from our coach as well, is that people a lot of think time management, right? But it's also energy management in terms of what we're doing. Now, with me, I know this isn't most people, but I'm unique. I have a lot of energy, right?
Yes.
And I can bring a lot of energy because I understand energy management. Now, what I do is I haven't had caffeine for years. So I don't drink coffee or teas. I have herbal teas, which are caffeine-free. So what that allows me to do is that I'm not pushing myself or pushing past the barrier that's getting closer to burnout because I'm using stimulants to be able to push my energy. So I'm very in tune with my energy. So sometimes if I'm pushing and I'm like, wow, I'm out of it a bit or whatever, I just need to, whether it's having a quick nap, whether it's going for that walk, doing the breathing, I'm very aware of myself. So I don't go past the threshold of burning myself out. So I think that's really important. And you know, if you love your coffees, that's fine, but just start to be aware of what's going on underneath, right? I think of yourself is really important. Like, I don't have processed sugar, these types of things. So understanding that, you know, is really important from that side of your body and doing that. Now, on the other side, I think what's possible for people in pushing yourself from a burnout perspective, you can push yourself more. It's very funny, right? What you work on and the purposefulness and passion behind that is a very big driver on your energy management. If you're doing something that you don't enjoy, you're gonna feel tired, you know, and eventually you probably burn yourself out even if you're not working that long, because it's just like, you know, you're not fulfilled, right? In terms of what you're doing. Lately, this hasn't been a lot, but the last couple of weeks, right? So much momentum, doing all these deals and stuff. I've been working to midnight or past midnight a little bit and waking up early, right? Because my son wakes up early, right? With my wife. And be getting less than 5 hours sleep a night. Now, normally I would aim to get closer to 7, right? And I do. But it's funny, because I'm working on all these amazing things, I have more energy than what I did when I was getting over 7 hours sleep.
The passion,
because
the positive emotion.
Positive emotion that goes with that. Now, I'm still aware of my body, and I still, not that I do that every night, I still have to have a little bit more sleep here or whatever like that, and naps, because I've still got to manage that. But it's interesting. So when you understand it, it's actually not the number of sleep you get. Obviously, if you get 1 hour or something, it's probably not going to be enough. But that little bit of sleep fluctuation shouldn't affect you that much, because if you're doing the right thing, you should be able to bring the energy, you know, to what you're doing. And if you're not getting that type of energy, it's like, should I be doing something else, or do I need to improve or change, mold what I'm doing now so that I have this amazing purpose, passion in terms of what I'm doing, whether it's one business, multiple businesses, however that works, you know, in terms of what you're doing. So I think that's really important, is what you're focusing on, how you regulate yourself, and everything there, and then, you know, connecting with people, you know, is a big thing.
And now you just saw we're mirroring again. I don't know if you guys can see it, like how we're sitting, we're mirroring each other again. Well, thank you so much. I know how busy you are. You still made the time. You came over here to the CBD area of Sydney to speak with us. Guys, if you loved today's session, please start following Athin, send it to your friends, give us some likes, and see you for the next episode. I don't know where in the world. Take care.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.